Ghostrunner, Matthew Castle, a game that when I was made aware of it, and it's Hotline Miami, stroke Titanfall, stroke Mirror's Edge, stroke Super Meat Boy, stroke whatever you want to say, I was like, I'm into this. But you lucky so-and-so, you've got to play the whole game. So I'm excited to hear your thoughts on it. So for the people who aren't aware of Ghostrunner, please do tell, what is Ghostrunner?
You are this sort of cyborg ninja, and you are climbing this massive skyscraper, Dharma Tower. And his moveset is quite Titanfall-y. You've got like a grappling hook, you've got a wall run, you've got a knee slide. You go down ramps, it speeds you up. You're sort of flinging yourself around. The difference is it's all sword combat, or from you, it's all sword combat. Everyone else has guns. I would have brought a gun too. That's his major failing, is that he literally brings a sword to a gunfight, which is dumb. And it's one-hit kills, so you fall down a gap, you're dead. Anyone snags you, you're dead. And you have to get pretty close to quite dangerous things to fight. So it's quite a tense game of risk and reward. Mm-hmm. On paper, like I thought this was going to be just like a big crazy power fantasy. It's just like, wow, ninjas are cool. You can pull off like these sort of 2-minute sequences of just obscene power. But actually it's about you die really quickly, and so you just have to be super fast and super efficient with everything. It's kind of split into two halves. There's sort of platforming, which is kind of getting around the tower, which is quite linear. Like there are clear routes where you're having to wall jump between things and grapple at the right time, and all that jazz, which are fine, but they're very like, it's kind of on the rails. Like you're obviously doing it, but you're just sort of following this very fixed path that they want you to follow. But in combat, you suddenly get these arenas and you have to kill every enemy in it before the door will unlock. So they've all got these chips in their heads. And it becomes a lot more interesting. It's almost like a big combat puzzle, because it's about the order you tackle enemies. Certain enemies you're going to struggle with more. They all behave differently. Do you want to try and get rid of the most dangerous enemy first? Do you want to kind of run around the edges, picking off the lighter enemies? You'll keep seeing me do these slow-mo dodges in the air. Like you can slow-mo time and sort of skid around bullets, but there are a lot of bullets and you will die a lot, and often you die and you don't really know why you've died, which is one of the things that bugged me a little bit about combat. It's a game that...
What do you mean you don't know why you died?
Well, often, like, there's so many enemies, like something will just shoot you from off screen and you're like, oh, okay. And, eventually each arena you're basically replaying again and again to get a lay of the land, work out an optimal route through it. And that's all fine. And I was struggling with it a little bit right at the very beginning, just because I felt like it's quite fast and punishing. I had something which felt quite fun. Like, then his ninja powers on paper are really sort of fun to mess around with, but you had to sort of behave in such a disciplined way that I wasn't having massive fun with it. But as the game develops, it basically introduces lots of new enemy types which are way better than the gunmen who are there at the start. And they behave in very specific ways. They've got very fixed attack patterns. And so this idea of it being a puzzle where you go into a room and you can see everyone and you know how they're going to behave. And so you start kind of picking them off in an order that works for you, and you can make your plans a bit more. And executing that is really good fun. It felt a little bit sort of seat of the pants for the first few hours, which I'm never a massive fan of in games.
I thought you were going to go another way with that, because I did play a preview build of this a couple of months ago, and I very much found that like every room was, I suppose, similar to Doom or Doom in that regard. Every room is a puzzle type of combat.
It is, but the difference is, like here, because one hit will kill you. You just naturally have a bit more wiggle room in Doom, and Doom is the harder game in that it just throws so much more at you, and you have to like really be on it, and it asks you to kind of keep your shit together for quite a long time, which is the different here. Like, really, you're just trying to pull off little 15-second bursts of like really efficient killing. Oh god, I'm watching on my desk. It's embarrassing, but I wanted to show you the rhythm of the game and how fast you respawn.
Well, you know what? This shows the realism of the game as well, Matthew.
Because that's important. Oh god, I'm very messy. But Yeah, as it introduced like more powers and more enemy types, like there are ninjas that you have to parry, there are these robots, you have to sort of slide under their energy fields to stab them in the guts. There are these giant bouncing guys that you can sort of dodge at the last minute and stab them up. Like, I actually much preferred the close combat enemies, like, 'cause it fits with your moveset a bit better. All this dodging bullets, it's not really where the game's at its best, I don't think.
You said you can be shot off screen and it feels unfair. Is it because, like for the close quarters combat, if you make a mistake, that's your fault, is it?
Yeah, there are enemies which just feel like they behave in a more rigid way, so I feel like I know how I failed with them, I know if I mistimed the slide under the thing, and they'll argue that, yes, you've got this bullets, the strategy for these gunmen is you slide around them, but there are so many gunmen, sometimes it's just very difficult to dodge them, but that's like, I pushed on, I died 1,423 times in the course of the campaign, which is a huge amount. If you had a heat map of it, you'd probably see that they're focused on, like, there are a couple of sections I genuinely died like hundreds of times. There's like one series of jumps admittedly in the last level, which was so rancid. It asks you to do this very difficult wall running for quite a long time, and it made me so mad. I was like, am I even going to finish this? But I did, because I'm a professional, and I wanted to make sure nothing surprising happened at the end.
But like when you're dying those hundreds of times on one section, is it unfair? Like, is it
not really? Because it's so well, I don't know. It's so fast that it just sort of blurs in. You don't really think like, oh man, you feel like you mess up, I guess.
Like the only reason I ask that is because I think that's what makes games like a Super Meat Boy, for example, work. Or a Hotline Miami, where if you die, you've made the mistake,
I say it's a real mix of, I think there are some bits where it's like, you get further than you got before, and then it's just like, surprise, it's something nightmarish that you don't know how to deal with. And so it's the surprise of the thing that kills you. I think sometimes there are things where I actually think the controls are tight, but there are bits where, like, the dash just didn't get me as far as it seemed to, like, the previous 10 times. And you just think, what happened there? Did I do it early? It's, like, murky. But again, it's going at such a rate that you don't really stop and analyse it all, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You don't really sit there and go, oh, it's this or that. I mean, I died for 1,000 different reasons. And I don't really mind that. I'm not saying it didn't like frustrate me in the same way. The platforming I'm definitely less keen on, because I feel like there is a solution to it, and it's just like you just have to enact their solution. In the combat, there's a bit of interpretation to it. So the order you tackle it in, the powers you decide to use, you can upgrade yourself and change yourself quite substantially with the upgrades, actually. And it feels like the character you bring into those combat situations is going to have quite a big impact on how you tackle them.
You mentioned a very hard platforming bit towards the end of the game, and how that's more linear and the combat is more open to interpretation. Is the platforming good? Because obviously first person platforming, it can be a little bit ropey sometimes.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's pretty fair. There are some things where, with some games, where you start them and where it restarts you, everything is like exactly timed. So like you start at the time you're meant to start, and then everything's going to be in place for your run. Here I actually find I do the same thing. Sometimes things be in like slightly different locations, if that makes sense, which makes it a bit harder to kind of judge. But yeah, I'd say, when you die that many times, part of it has to be on you, and it probably sounds like I'm more down on it than I am. Like, weirdly, it's a game I grew to like a lot more as it went on, and I think it actually really comes together once you've finished it and you start replaying it, because you bring all the upgrades from your entire campaign. You have them to you can replay the first level with like a fully upgraded person, and it changes. It changes the difficulty. Like when you come back to that first level after beating the whole thing, you can do it without dying once. I mean, it seems like an absolute doddle. And also the like I said, the powers you have are just a bit more interesting. You can do more interesting things. You can like mess with people. I mean, what I'm using here is this like you can kind of hijack enemies to attack their friends,
right?
Which is obviously like, and this doesn't come in until quite late in the game, but this is a much earlier level that I've brought it into. So actually, like replaying it is very different, and I think it's here when you've got this fully unlocked character that you'll be doing like pursuing best times, trying to climb the leaderboards for like fewest deaths. That's where the game like it just becomes a lot more fun. Where there's just a bit too much frustration the first time round. And it kind of depends what kind of player you are. If you're someone who likes to master something and kind of replay something to kind of get better at it, and if you chase high scores or best times or whatever, I think you'll find a lot in this. If you're just playing it for like, I just want like a one and done 6-hour campaign, I think that isn't the game at its best.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the campaign, because I'm seeing a lot of names pop up here, Matthew, and I am aware there is a story, but you haven't mentioned much about said story, so I'm guessing it's not great?
Yeah, well, the big problem with it is it's all delivered in as voiceover, and it's a game where you're trying to really concentrate on not dying. So, like, you're in the middle of combat situations and they're delivering exposition. It doesn't get repeated, which is actually a godsend, because if every time I died, it started the line again, I would want to murder this guy. I'd have heard some lines like hundreds of times. Yeah. But the downside of that is like, if you miss it, which you probably will because you're trying not to die, that you can be like, what? Like, I genuinely don't know what some of this game is about. I mean, it's not that complicated. It's, you're trying to climb to the top of the tower because there's someone nasty at the top.
It's Dread or the Raid.
Yeah, basically. I wasn't paying much attention to it. But it's neither good nor bad. It's just not important to play and appreciate the game. Also, it's cheap. It's cheaper. I think like it's launching at like 20 quid or something, or 25. And it's pretty polished. And it's a nice looking game. A bit heavy on the pipes and vents, but yeah, I had fun with it, and I liked it a lot more at the end. And I'm still, I was tinkering with it today and having fun with it. And when you're enjoying it, then you don't really think of the, struggles you had with it earlier on, if that makes sense.